It was early morning near the end of the summer when I stepped out the front door of my house. The leaves on the trees had just begun to show their autumn colors. I took a deep breath of the fresh morning air. The sweetness of the air filled my undead lungs. Ah! I walked over to one of the chairs on the porch and sat down. I liked the early morning hours when my farmstead was calm. Otis, the baby zombie pigman who lived with me and with whom I had been on many adventures, was still asleep. Our 2 chickens, Harold and Bob, were also sleeping, safe in their chicken coop. I surveyed my wheat fields. I smiled. The wheat had turned brown a few days ago and was ready for harvest. When Otis got up, I would send him into the nearby village to rent a horse and cart while I harvested the wheat. We needed the horse and cart to transport our harvest into town to sell to local villager merchants. You may think it's weird that a baby zombie is also a farmer, but it really isn't. Growing food sure beats fighting for a living, and I've done more than my fair share of fighting, that's for sure. While I waited for Otis to wake up, he was a late sleeper, I went to the edge of the wheat field and used one of my older diamond swords to slash the wheat stalks. Once I had chopped enough stalks, I gathered them into a pile and tied them with spider string. I kept at it, clearing about half the field, when I heard Otis call to me from the porch.
"What are you doing out there, Zeke?"
Otis asked, scratching his stomach. "Harvesting the wheat, obviously."
"You know I don't care much about all this farming nonsense,"
Otis grumbled, stretching his arms above his head.
"I'd rather just steal loot from annoying players."
I put my sword away and walked back to the front of my house. When I got there, Otis was sitting in a chair eating from a jar of applesauce. "You sure do like applesauce these days," I said.
"You know I stomp on apples when I get upset. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Calm myself down and make a supply of delicious food."
I chuckled. "I didn't realize you're an efficiency expert now." Otis scowled at me as he continued to shovel applesauce into his mouth with a large spoon. I watched him, fascinated by how quickly he ate. "Look," I said, "I hate to interrupt your breakfast, but I need you to go to town and get a horse and a cart so we can transport the wheat into town and sell it."
"Why do I have to do that?"
Otis whined. I turned and pointed to the partially cleared wheat field. "If you want to harvest the rest of the wheat, I'll go to town and get the cart and horse." Otis swallowed hard and put the lid on his jar of applesauce. He tucked the jar and spoon into his inventory. He stood up quickly.
"You're never getting me to work in that stupid field. I'll go to town. I just need to wake up Bob so I can ride to town in jockey formation."
I smiled. "I thought you might see it my way." About an hour later, I was clearing the last few stalks of wheat. My chicken, Harold, stood nearby watching me work. "You've got a good rhythm going with that sword, Zeke," Harold said. "That's what harvesting is all about, finding a rhythm." I laughed. "Since when do you know anything about harvesting?" Harold placed the tips of his wings on his hips and looked at me with a flat expression. "I harvest things all the time, mostly seeds from the ground." I slashed at the last stalks of wheat and bundled them together with the last few loose stalks on the ground. When I finished, I turned to Harold. "You call pecking for seeds harvesting? That doesn't seem right." "That's because you're not a chicken." Harold ruffled his feathers and crossed his wings in front of his chest. "You harvest your way, and I'll harvest mine." I laughed. "I can't tell if you're trying to be funny or not, but you're a cool chicken, buddy." Harold smiled. "I knew that already." Harold turned and looked down the path that led from my property toward the village. He had a concerned look on his face. "Otis and Bob have been gone for quite a while. It should have only taken them 5 or 10 minutes to get to town in jockey position. I hope nothing happened to them." I rubbed my chin and nodded, looking down the road in the same direction. "Let's hope Otis didn't say something to get in trouble. You know what a hothead he is." Harold nodded solemnly. "Indeed I do." He sighed. "You know, sometimes when Bob and I are alone relaxing in the chicken coop, he tells me that he occasionally wishes he had a different jockey. Otis can be very chaotic." "Yeah, I know what you mean."